So here we are in Lublin, and we've just finished a 4-day boot camp with some guys, and we're sitting in a shisha bar. They're playing some pretty nice Latin music here for some reason, which is quite cool. And yeah, we were just chewing the fat about some stuff, weren't we? And about specifically about bringing sexuality and sexual intent into interactions. What were your opening thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. So I mean, I obviously spent time with you in Russia last year, and a couple of times you would go into dates and pull girls home very, very fast, which is a great way to do it, right? And my question to you was, how important is this kind of framing everything through the sexual mentality with man to female dynamics in the conversation, or can you kind of get away with just being like going up, being direct, and it gets a bit wishy-washy in the middle where you close direct, and then you get laid from that, or is that going to result in loads of flakes? And yeah, basically, how important for you on a personal level for your own game, I guess, because that's always a good reference point. Is this sexual filter? Because I've noticed you often make kind of some dirty jokes and things, but they're clever. They're not like oh, look at my knob. It's more like do you like it big? Do you like it hard? It's almost like NLP innuendo stuff, but just almost jokey. But so you're good at putting that in. How important, throughout the years, do you feel that's weighed into, your game, I guess?
Well, I think it's really important, and I think actually, in many ways, it's been the cornerstone of whatever success really I've had in dating, is that I have been able to, as much as I look like a very mild-mannered sort of English, kind of gentleman, which I kind of am, but I've also been able to access that sort of rather naughty side of my personality, and I think it's been really super important, to be honest. And I think when we're teaching students, it's actually one of the key things a lot of guys just don't have, or they find difficult to access. I mean, saying that, obviously the boot camp we've just had, one of the guys, I think he kind of had it. I think he had it down. It was very clear.
Mr. Carlsberg.
Yeah, Mr. Carlsberg. I think he was very clear. What he wanted when he went to speak to these girls. There was no sort of smoke and mirrors. He was very clear at communicating that undertone of sexuality. But then many of the students we have, including our friend, Mr. Lee, maybe that's something that he needed to bring more into the equation, right? I think it's super important, because for me, it's like you go into an interaction, you go into an approach, and really you want to make her feel something. And it just seems to me the best thing to make her feel is a bit excited, right? A bit turned on, because you want her to think back later in the day, to think back on that interaction and to think, oh, that was kind of exciting. That was kind of cool, and to make her feel a little bit like, oh, I want to see that guy again. I think that's why a lot of the time, with girls that I've dated, I've seen them again, because they've had that, because otherwise you just have a bland conversation. It's like, okay, well, he was a nice guy, but what else is there to it,
Yeah, and I mean, the beginner thing is start off in super sociable mode, isn't it? And get lots of dates, but then the girls are coming out on the date, and there's no sexual threat there. So you might sleep with her, but it's going to take you 3, 4, 5 dates. She's putting you into that boyfriend box, which most guys, if they're travelling around the world and, wanting to do some damage, maybe you've got limited time in each place, that's not what you want.
Yeah.
And you're going to, the thing that confuses guys is when they start turning on the sexuality, and at the end of the video we're going to tell you some actionable steps about how to actually do that, because it's all about practicality. When they start doing that, their results, quote unquote, get worse. So what happens is they suddenly start ringing up. Well, going, oh, Mr. Francis, Mr. Tusk, messaging us, going, I suddenly, like, my results have gone through the floor. I'm getting blown out loads. I'm getting loads of flaky numbers. I'm getting girls that aren't coming out on dates. But it's not a sign your game's getting worse. It's a sign you're injecting the sexual viability, the sexual threat, and so women know exactly what you want. And a lot of women are not going to be DTF, right? So they're going to blow you out. They're going to get rid of you at the opening exchanges. But you're actually doing yourself a favour, because you're saving yourself time on the back end. You're not getting girls out who basically just want to be validated. You're going to get girls out who are actually genuinely attracted to you. You've set the frame, which is, I'm a man, you're a girl. The chances are, if you come out on a date, things are going to go down, or that's the insinuation. And a lot of girls will bow out of that, but that's not a sign your game's getting worse.
Yeah.
It's actually getting more refined, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the student that Mr. Lee, who I was out with before, he was talking to this girl, got into a conversation with her, and he's really good at conversation, and he got her to stop, and he was talking to her for a decent amount of time, but it was all fairly sort of friendly kind of chit chat. And he said afterwards that if I'd have been more direct, if I'd have been a bit more, had that more sexual undertone to it, then she probably would have just, she probably just wouldn't have stopped. She would have walked off. And I was like, well, okay, that maybe you're right, but on the other hand, what's the point of having a 10-minute kind of nicey friendly conversation with somebody, but there's no real glue that's going to hold it together underneath, so it's almost better to get rejected earlier on. Now, I mean, we have to again be clear about this. We're not talking about coming in with some really crude, like, sexual kind of comments or anything like that. It's got to be subtle. It could just be, the way that you use eye contact, your proximity, your body language in relation to hers. Those things are super important. And in fact, you can not say anything really sexual at all, but you can communicate it through those things.
I mean, that's why I like to get guys to supplement club game where they go out, maybe they have a few drinks and they let their inhibitions go a bit, because they're able to get quite sexual with girls quite quickly. Making out with girls is quite not an easy thing to do, but it's quite prevalent in night game and stuff like that. And that the whole thing is more sexualized. So that's why we kind of typically like to do a bit of night game with guys, because it just, things like one night stands can happen, and the whole vibe is a bit more sexual, isn't it?
Yeah. But what's your view on it, though? I mean, how important do you think it is, or is there a counter argument that actually you can be a great conversationalist, you can be kind of cheeky, chappy, cheery, and you can still get sort of results through that?
I think the danger is a bit like when we find out that girls respond to the dark triad taste, they want an arsehole. You go overly arsehole, and you start basically being a bit of a prick. I mean, and it's the same with the sexualization thing. You suddenly start thinking you have to do all this crazy sexual shit, like making out with her in the streets, spinning around and all this, and it's too much. So like anything, it's sprinkling in the ingredients, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and also as well, sometimes the hint of it, the implication is there. Like a lot of the time, maybe you don't need very much at all, because if you go up to a girl and you just have a quick, if you just go up and you have like a quick conversation with her, then you ask for her number or you get her Instagram or something. I mean, she kind of knows what's up. So in many cases, I think it depends how you come across as a guy in the first place. Because if you come across as somebody who you've got a little bit of swagger to you, she can probably see that you've had some previous girlfriends, whatever. You've probably got a bit of pre-selection going on. She's going to you ask for her number, she's going to kind of get it, right? So maybe you don't need to sprinkle in as much of the sexual stuff. But there's other guys that they just come across as a very nice guy. They come across as very nice. And when I'm saying nice guy, no sexual threat. And for those guys, I think they need to turn the volume up, because otherwise the girl might just think, and we were saying before as well, it's kind of weird why girls do this. Why a girl would give a guy her number that she doesn't particularly fancy, and will then even go for a coffee with him or whatever. But they amazingly, they do seem to do it, don't they?
Yeah.
And then you're wasting your time.
I mean, we all start out like this, right? For me, I was breaking myself just speaking to girls in the street, in bars, coffee shops. As a guy who'd grown up drinking heavily and just being completely reliant on alcohol, going to private school, hadn't been around women much. It was a revelation even having very nice guy conversations. I mean, that rocked my world. So we all start off in social mode. But then what you want to do is eventually transition it to sexual, because sexual is faster. Just to be clear, you will get more blowouts. You will get more girls saying no to you. They know exactly what you want, or there's an insinuation of that. And you're going to get a perceived drop in results, but you're not actually getting a drop in results. You're just filtering better for girls that are actually into what you're into.
Yeah.
So...
because I mean, otherwise, there was a very, there's been famous people who do sort of, dating and all that kind of stuff. Who, some have been examples of people with very, very friendly, almost gay best friend game. Right. Where they go up and they have these very flowery conversations, and they can be really, really engaging. And they can talk to a girl they've just met, and they're talking for hours, and they're really connecting on this deep level. But all of that stuff really is rapport, isn't it? So they're great at the rapport, they're great at the empathy, and the girl's like, oh, this guy really understands me, and blah, blah, blah. But what it kind of isn't is attraction, and actually the attraction bit is the most important bit.
Yeah. Does that mean that, for a guy watching this, is he thinking, right, I have to, for everything I do, it has to be sexualized? Or is it about actionable steps they can actually, which we'll give you at the end, but is it about implementing actionable steps to become that guy, or is it about almost having a sexualized mindset with every interaction we have with women? Or is it a bit of both? I mean, what's your personal experience?
I think it's probably a bit of both, but I think if you are, again, I mean, we live in a very politically correct world, but ultimately, if you're walking up to somebody because you're attracted to them, then that should be front of mind, really.
would you have to be practicing with girls you're not attracted to purely because they're female, for instance? Or are you always kind of in that mindset of practicing?
I think, I mean, people used to talk about male to female, didn't they? Is the interaction male to female or not? And by that, what they mean is it sort of like, you know, I'm here, I'm a guy, you know, I'm attracted to you, and that's the fundamental basis of that. And I think you've always got to have that in mind.
Yeah.
Really,
it's
you know.
Easy to forget, isn't it? And my Fuhrer Crinkler of all people, Nick Krauser, to be fair to him, was the one guy that said, "Look, the reason I go out with a condom loose in my pocket is so I remember why I'm actually out on the street." Because it can be we can forget sometimes. You're just kind of going through the motions on autopilot, aren't you?
Yeah, totally. And you know, sorry, we're just getting some shisha here at the moment. Bit of Calian for the troops. Yeah, I mean, it's again, this all has to be tempered with common sense and a bit of, you know, social nous. I mean, what we're not saying is going in and being, like I say, you know, saying really crude things or making people uncomfortable or anything like that. But you want to just inject that element of flirtatiousness. And I think
that's the first stage, isn't it? And we'll go through this on the actionable part. But that's the first stage is very verbalised. The kind of higher end stage is where you're almost picturing the girl naked and you're looking at her in such a way where it's not discernible. It's very kind of secret society stuff where she knows you're undressing her with your eyes, but you can't get caught because you're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah. So this concept,
dynamite, really. The women are like, that guy gets it.
Yeah. So
the guy that gets it.
Yeah, exactly. So that concept of the secret society was first, I think, invented by Tyler from RSD, Owen Cook, and he wrote this blog post about it. And it was basically this idea that all women are in the secret society, so all women know that, you know, sex happens a lot and fast sex can happen, and there's a lot of discretion.
Closed doors, cheating, banging.
Yeah, exactly. So all women are in the secret society by default.
And gay guys.
Gay guys are in it as well, and a few heterosexual guys are in it, but not many. And you want to communicate to her that you are one of them, that you understand this
almost
sort
like
of
a driving test, isn't it? Where you've got to show the instructor you're deliberately looking out the window. But it's almost like that. You know, I get that. I know that. You know that I know. Yeah,
exactly. So when you interact with her, you want to sort of communicate on the surface level. You're just having a chat and you're talking about like, oh yeah, it's nice to be in Lublin, or where are the cool bars and stuff like that. But the sub-communication is that you can sort of in some way see through her, and you know that underneath it she's a bit of a wildcat, and you're okay with that. That's the other thing. It's non-judgmental.
Talking about very surface level stuff, but it's the actual behind the scenes, because obviously the verbals account for very little of emotional communication. The body language and the way you're saying stuff and the way you're looking at her is like, we're gonna bang.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a nuanced skill, right? That's not easy to attain. And that requires constant work and practice.
Yeah, it does. And if people are watching this and they're just thinking, I don't know, even really know where to begin or what you're talking about. I mean,
how do you guys are going to be thinking, right? How do you put yourself into that horny state? And if I'm a bit nervous with creating, because a big thing for a lot of guys is, no, all good.
Oh, here we go.
Like one of the things that a lot of guys struggle with is basically seeing, you know, being a bit more sexual. It sounds bad, but being a bit more sexually predatory, in the sense that, you know, they're looking at the girl like they want to have sex with her, and actually, you know, they're comfortable projecting that sexuality, because a lot of men are not, and they're going on dates and they kind of feel, and I was going through that stage as well, when I'm actually comfortable really owning that sexual intent, because you're worried about rejection, you're worried about being called a pervert and blah blah blah. So how do you go about cultivating that? Is that just a time thing, or is that a mindset thing that you constantly have to keep in mind?
Well, I think it's a mindset thing to some extent. I think you've got to recognise, okay, look, I'm a guy, I have certain desires, and it's okay, as long as you're not doing anything that's, you know, non-consensual, or you're doing anything that, you know, that's obviously wrong. It's okay still, even in 2022, to be a guy and to, you know, to desire to have romantic relationships with women, right? So you go in and you think, this is okay, I'm not going to do anything wrong, I'm not going to cross the line in any way, but, you know, I am attracted to you, I do like you, I want to be with you. So have that at the forefront of your mind, and then just always throughout the interaction, just have it forefront of mind. Look, the basis of this is not we're trying to be best friends. It's not that I want to, you know, find out, you know, talk to you about where you got your clothes from, or find out about your job as a primary school teacher or whatever. You know, the basis of this fundamentally is that we want to get together, and that's the prism through which you should view it, right? I think that's and then beyond that, I think eye contact. I'd have to say is so super important.
I think that's more of an advanced thing, isn't it? I think that the basic steps, the actionable steps guys need to go with are doing things like we've been saying to Miss Lee, which is spiking. So think of it as a heart rate monitor, like someone's died and you've got to spike up that interaction. So opening strong, putting your intentions on the line. Hey, I think you look great. Closing strong, I find you attractive. But then within that conversation, spiking it up. So the handhold thing we talk about a lot, or getting caught looking at her tits or looking at her ass or saying you've got fucking sexy eyes. Risking it, basically.
Yeah.
Who dares wins almost.
Yeah.
Once you're comfortable doing that, and that's going to take some time, that might take 3-4 months to get used to, then it's about being more direct with the eye contact. So you're picturing her naked, you're picturing things going down between you. And if you, it's almost an NLP, self-NLP thing of like really just getting used to that and getting comfortable with that. Because for me, I know for a fact that took a long time to get comfortable with.
Yeah.
Like, can I have this thought swirling around my head? Is it wrong?
Yeah.
It's brought up very nice and to be very respectful and blah, blah, blah. And it's almost like the shit going on in your mind. And the way to do that for me was listening to books that kind of actually painted the picture of female sexuality. So things like the evolutionary stuff, a lot of cheating stuff, things like A Billion Wicked Thoughts, the big data survey of people's porn habits, really seeing what women get off on. And books like Why Secret Garden.
Yeah.
And really just kind of repeatedly going through that material.
Yeah, totally, because you've got to just be realistic and understand that, men are sexual beings, but so are women, and actually, there's an argument to be made that women are more sexual in some ways than men.
Multiple orgasms, we fucking can't. I've tried.
Many times.
That's the missing piece, I think, for a lot of guys. It's and Torero, to be fair to him, said this, he goes, get sociable first, become very socially free, so we always talk about total social freedom plus intent. Do day game in night sky mode, just get used to speaking to people, being charming, being bantery, and then the next step in your evolution, because in cold approach and dating, we're always going to look to get in a comfort zone, is actually push it and really project sexual intent.
Yeah, exactly, and be okay with the fact that they're
okay with that. And it's not going to be comfortable, and it's almost like falling in love with being a bit uncomfortable with it and knowing there's a crackle in the air, and not trying to break it, not trying to like nice guy over it, like like own it, right? And that's we're talking about stuff that can take years to really learn.
Yeah, absolutely, and
the best way to do that is come out to Poland.
Well, it is. I was going to say without going into the upsell, but we will. If you really want to see this stuff in action and understand how this stuff works, then actually coming out and getting some mentoring is a great way to go, because it's the kind of thing. It's much easier probably for us to teach it face to face in real life.
And also analysing conversations, right?
Yeah.
So we film a lot of this video you're watching this on. It's a very discreet camera. We won't give away the branding, trade secrets, but it's brilliant. We'll film students with this, we'll film dates with this, and then we'll sit down and go through and give feedback. And it's very easy to kind of then, when we're all watching it together, to be like, right, you need to be more sexual, spike there, because again, guys charge around in their conversations, they don't really know what they're doing in real time. So you come out, we dissect it, we analyse it, we give you stuff to do, and then you go and do it.
Yeah, if people actually want a little bit more on this as well, there's a book by Mr. Torero called... No, well, I mean that, perhaps, but there's a book called How to Flirt with Girls, which is just a PDF. You can probably get it somewhere online. I think have a look online, but if you grab a copy of that, he lists out a lot of different little spikes you can use, and they're all quite humorous things. I mean, it's nothing like shocking, but they're all quite little jokey type things that you can just drop in, just to add a little bit of tension into the conversation, because tension really.
It's really, for me, the big thing was getting comfortable looking at her in the eye and not giving way, and just being like, okay, I'm not going to budge on this. And it's almost like that hard dominance, but also if you're horny, it helps. So again, we talk about this a lot, but get your test levels measured, don't masturbate too much, go to the gym, eat clean, all this sort of stuff. It's ironic because I'm
eat clean, is it? Yeah, it's got Burger King under the table. I had a really good point that I was going to make then, and it's just completely gone out of my mind, because I'm looking at that girl in the red dress. But it's sort of like, being okay with it, very important, and I suppose playing the game on your terms, because you go on a date.
The other, sorry to interrupt, but the other really good point is not all women are going to buy into the sexual frame.
True.
You're going to have a lot of girls where you kind of put this out and they are not buying into it, right? So you start feeling like a bit of a creep, but you've got to risk that.
Yeah.
You've got to risk, because frames, right? It's always one frame is dominant. You're going to throw some of this sexual frame stuff out, like I flirt with girls, or tease them and spite them, and they're not going to respond right. And you've just got to. It's not doing it wrong. You're just risking it by putting it out.
You can be the gentleman sort of flirt as well. Though you can be like the gentleman cad. You know, like the old Roger Moore, James Bond. You know, it's sort of like he goes around. He's on the surface he's a perfect gentleman, but he's got that twinkle in the eye. I mean, Sean Connery as well. Twinkle in the eye, very flirty. There's a sort of a very sort of masculine, polarizing undertone to it, but at the same time, you know, he's gonna make sure she gets home okay. He's gonna sort of like, you know, and if the woman is not buying into it, absolutely fine. You just walk away, you know.
But it's best done in small doses. So it's like that coquette thing talked about in Law of Seduction, where it's on and off. So you're being playful fun, but then sexual, like a little bit of sexual intent with the eyes. It's not constantly you're in this hyper-sexualized mode.
No,
so
absolutely.
There's nuances to it as well.
Because if you do that,
then you're just coming.
Then you,
like, you know,
yeah, and then you can get blown out. You will get blown out. So I've done things like, I mean, we were just saying to the guys, but you know, if you're in the middle of a conversation, you know, you just met her, you're in the middle of a conversation, and it's getting a little bit boring. You know, she's telling you about her job as a land surveyor or something, and she's, oh yeah, well, I'm going to qualify for, you know, in 2 years and blah blah blah. You could just stop, cut the thread, as the Threadmeister would say, and just say, your eyes are looking really cute today, or you look really cute in that dress, or something like that, and then you're just bringing the context of the conversation back to where it should be, really, which is that, look, this is ultimately a man to woman thing.
Yeah. And you know, I've been in this stage as well, so what's some advice for guys that really aren't comfortable doing this sort of stuff? Because it does take time to get used to doing that protection, that comfortable vibe and going for it, right? So what are some, apart from obviously doing the actionable verbal spikes, I mean, what are some, are there any other tips on mindset to cultivate this kind of man to woman polarity, or is it just you know?
Well, I think first of all, be aware of it, which you are, having now watching this video, and then make a commitment to just go out and practice, and make a commitment to take risks in conversation, because a lot of this, and this is the point I was going to make, part of this is sort of thinking, oh, I need to be polite, or I need to consider her feelings and stuff like that, which is, you know, fair enough, but part of it is also that you just don't want to get rejected. You don't want to put yourself on the line. You don't want to put yourself on the line, because if you say, oh, you got pretty eyes, and then or you know, you look great in that dress, and she goes, what are you talking about? Fuck off. You're blown out, and you don't want to risk that. So you'd rather have a nice conversation. You don't take the risks, and then you go away and, you know, feeling superficially like it's a victory, when actually maybe it isn't. So I think you've just got to be okay with taking risks, and maybe, you know, losing the odd girl here or there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Again, we can go into detail on this on maybe a private Zoom call or something, but
I think it's one maybe for, you know, it's quite an in-depth topic.
Elongated thing, but we've given you some actionable steps to go and start using, which is start with the verbal spikes, and then upgrade really once you're comfortable with that, with the elongated eye contact and picturing basically shit going down, like she's naked or you're having sex with her. I mean, those are the basic things. If you actually just go and implement those over the next 3 months, that's going to heavily sexualize your game.
Absolutely, and you know, just remember what you're there for. You know, you're there. Yes, you know, you probably think she's a great person. You guys will probably have a lot in common and all that, and all those things are great, and they're certainly great in a relationship. But remember that the underpinning of a relationship, ultimately, especially at first, is attraction, and that attraction has got to come through male to female polarity.
And the sooner you can convert that into physical, basically getting laid, the easier it is to then dictate what you want, whether it's a one-night stand or whether you want a relationship or non-exclusive, whatever. The quicker you can get her into bed, really the better. There's no substitute for that. You can do all the shit in the end, but if you didn't actually get laid, she wasn't really ever that into it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, and again, you know, you can then go off into the sunset and have a beautiful relationship, or even get married or whatever. I mean, that's entirely up to you. But the fundamental glue is the sexual side of it, and that's what you need to concentrate on at the beginning, regardless of what you want, you know. Anyway, have we said enough on this topic? There's a couple of nuns walking past now, so maybe we better finish in case we offend them.
We should. We've gone over 20 minutes. I think that's the standard protocol, isn't it?
It is. Good stuff, guys. Thanks for tuning in. See you on the next video. Bye bye.